that the Quran does not have an explanation for. I'm going to list them very quickly.
Okay. Doesn't have what?
Doesn't have an explanation for.
Four.
And I'm going to list them very quickly.
Okay.
And then I want you to use what your Quran says to explain these historical facts.
That's fair.
Okay, I'm going to list the 12.
We can, but I cannot.
Wait, let me finish. Let me finish. Let me finish. Dude, let me finish. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are the 12 facts. I'm going to list them. Jesus died by crucifixion. Jesus was buried in a tomb. Disciples despaired and felt hopeless because of the crucifixion. The tomb was empty a few days later. The disciples believed they experienced a literal appearance of a risen Jesus Christ. The disciples were transformed by that experience. Jesus' resurrection was the central message of the early church. The disciples proclaimed the resurrection in Jerusalem, where Jesus had been crucified. As a result of their preaching, the church grew. Sunday became the primary day of Christian worship. James, who was skeptical of his half-brother Jesus, converted to Christianity. Paul, who was a persecutor of the early church, converted to Christianity. Now, using your Quran and what your Quran states, explain to me these historical events.
Doesn't have to.
Right, justify that statement.
The Quran makes theological points. It doesn't make historical. It does make historical points as he was crucified, but it doesn't make kind of this. It doesn't have to go into history. It makes theological points, and that's, I don't know, man.
Okay.
You're asking for something that's not there, so it's not there. Just to be clear, but it doesn't have to explain these things.
Okay, so the answer to the challenge is justified. It is a fair response. It is to say that the Quran doesn't have to explain these points. I agree. There is no moral obligation upon the Quran to explain these historical events. However, the fact remains that these historical events did happen. Historians believe them. Real historians believe them. And the reality is, if you take the Quranic story seriously, which is that Christ was not crucified, someone like him was crucified in his place, that explains the first point, that Jesus died by crucifixion. It explains the second point, that Jesus was buried in a tomb. It explains the third point, that the disciples despaired and felt hopeless, but it does not answer any of the points, such as the empty tomb, the transformation of the apostles' outlook, the fact that they started treating Sunday as an important day of the week, the fact that the resurrection was central to the early Christian message even before Paul.
But these things are explained properly in the Bible. And
yes.
There is a clear message in the Quran. God said that if you need to know things which is not in the Bible, you can go to the previous books.
Right.
That's the first one. Second one, you know my opinion about the Jesus resurrection. I believe that Jesus was on the cross, and it is in line with the Quran.
And that he died.
And he died and he rose up again.
And that's what you believe the Quran states.
And there is a three so far Muslim scholars they have admitted that.
What are those Muslim scholars? Yeah, he's run away. He's running away.
Yeah, but I need to explain to him the situation.
Right, so who are the three scholars that say that the Quran agrees with the Bible that Jesus Christ was crucified?
The first one is Umran Hussain.
Yeah.
He's a very famous scholar. He's from Pakistan.
Yep. Can I get a bottle of water, please? I'm sorry. Yep. Go on. Who's the second?
And the second one is...
You pull him up. While you're pulling him up, do you agree with him that that's what the Quran states?
No.
What do you think the Quran states?
I agree with the mainstream idea,
which is
he wasn't crucified in the first place, because it states clearly he was not crucified, he was not killed.
So let us assume that you're correct.
Yeah, so.
Right? How do you explain the fact of the empty tomb?
I don't have to explain the fact of the empty tomb.
Well, you do, because the first Christians proclaimed a risen Jesus.
What can I present to you a problem with the story of the empty tomb?
Yeah, go on.
Because okay, so for example, I've heard the rabbi say this, and the way they found out about the empty tomb is the three women, or however women they were,
Yeah.
They went to the tomb to get the spices and went to the tomb, and then they found that the tomb was empty. However, he explained that there was no reason for them to go with it, and that would be the stupidest thing to do. And that's why it didn't happen. And the reason is because the spices are used so that the dead body does not stink.
Yeah.
So it's used for the burial. When the burial takes place, people do not smell the bad smell.
Yep.
And after the burial, there is no reason for someone to go to get the spices and go to put the spices on someone when the thing is done, when he's in the tomb. So the story doesn't make sense. Therefore,
no, that's the argument.
My knowledge.
No, let me reply to him, and then you
history.
you can reply as well, because we got three different opinions here. One Muslim who thinks the Quran teaches that Christ was dead and crucified, and one who doesn't believe that the Quran teaches that, and then the Christian position. But you're making the argument from people like Rabbi Tovia Singer.
Yeah.
This is the kind of argument that counter missionaries make. But the reality is, the Jews like Rabbi Tovia Singer are making their arguments from 5th century Talmudic teachings. 5th century Talmudic teachings do not account for 1st century Judaic practices. There are lots of things that are normative to Judaism after the 5th century that are not normative to the 1st century. What we have are historical records that demonstrate that Jews did go to their tombs in the 1st century to anoint them with spices. We've got 1st century documentation. They're called the Gospels.
Yes.
What you're arguing from is rabbinic 5th century traditions. That's 5 centuries too late.
now, I've been told that too many times. I don't believe that is the case.
Well,
However, if all your documents are the Gospels, then you're relying on the Gospels as a historical record. I wouldn't take them as a serious historical record of things.
The second
I thought when you said there are historical documents that demonstrate that Jews used to do this in the 1st century, I assumed it was in a place other than the Gospels. But if it's only in the Gospels, then I wouldn't take it seriously.
right, hold on one second, because I'm going to demonstrate to you that there are historical sources that show that burying the crucified condemned man was normative in the 1st century.
I'm not saying
No, let me finish. Because what I'm demonstrating to you is if I'm demonstrating that it's normative to bury the crucified man, then that is extra biblical sources that support the evidence of the Gospels.
No.
Yes.
No, the burial
Yes.
and putting the spices in someone is two different things. It's not-
No. You have not shown me any reason to doubt. All you've done is make the same conjecture that Rabbi Tovia Singer has made.
No.
Show me why I should believe you.
Well, for one, the reason to put
Don't assert. Give me historical evidence to show.
Well, I don't have. I'm not Jew. I'm not familiar with these things.
Right.
But
Yeah, exactly. You're not a Jew and you're not familiar. You're repeating what you heard from a Rabbi Tovia Singer video, and that's what you're repeating.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But the point is, Rabbi Tovia Singer throws everything in the kitchen sink at the idea of the Christian faith. But the reality is, I'm about to show you 1st century evidence that corresponds with the testimony that we have in the Gospels. So my evidence is entirely 1st century.
Based on history.
Yes, based on history. I'm making a historical argument. You're making an argument from the 20th century by Rabbi Tovia Singer, who's using 5th century documents to base his criticism of Christianity. It's 5 centuries too late.
We'll see. Okay.
So, listen to this is what Josephus Flavius writes. And Josephus Flavius was a 1st century historian who wrote about the Jewish wars and the revolt in 70 AD. He was made by the Sanhedrin at the birth of the revolt, the governor of, I believe, Galilee. But when he realized the game was up, he swapped sides, he became a Roman, and then he wrote a history to curry favor with the Romans. But this is what he wrote, speaking about the murder of the high priests in Jerusalem during the revolt. Listen to what he says carefully in Jewish Wars 4:317. Are you listening?
Yeah.
They actually went so far in their impiety as to cast out the corpses without burial. Though the Jews are so careful about funeral rites that even malefactors who have been sentenced to crucifixion or taken down and buried before sunset. So Josephus is contrasting the behavior of the rebels with what is normal to Jewish culture, that those that were crucified are taken down from the tomb, from the cross, and buried before sunset. And what do we hear in the Gospels? That on the day of his crucifixion, Joseph of Arimathea went to Pontius Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus to bury it in a tomb. And if he went to Pontius Pilate and buried it in a tomb, he did so, and they buried it in the tomb that was near, because the sun was about to set and the Sabbath was about to begin. So in other words, the gospel accounts agrees with the testimony of Josephus Flavius as to the cultural norms of the time. So I have historical evidence, you have assertion.
My problem was with the spices, not with the burial.
So deal with the burial, because if Jesus Christ was buried, there's a body in a tomb.
Okay,
so deal with the burial.
Do you have any statement in the Bible where God did say that Jesus was I'm not sure,
That Jesus was?
Like he was on the cross and then he took him out and he was in a tomb? God?
Yes, I'll show you. Okay, so the question's a fair one. Let me show you in the Bible where it states clearly.
As you know, I don't base my information on history.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Okay, I'll show you.
The Quran.
I will show you in the Bible. It's a fair question. So my point to you.
God war.
Yeah. So my point to you, Amir, is that if history is showing that Christ was buried, you can appeal to the spices argument all you want. You've still got a body in a tomb.
I'm appealing to the
First of all, as we know, the Quran did not say that could be someone else on the cross instead of Jesus.
Have you got the other
Quran
Muslim?
say could be someone else on the cross?
It says that it was.
So they either be
How about you both get your Quran out and argue over the passage?
Well, I know the passage.
No,
Everyone
I'm not
knows.
arguing in front of you.
Why don't you want to argue in front of me?
What the
Anyone
Quran-
might say that you're embarrassed.
What the Quran said, and he meant that they did not succeed in killing him, they did not succeed in crucifying him.
Yeah.
But only it's appeared to them
Okay.
that by putting Jesus on the cross,
Yeah.
it's appeared to them that he died completely and he finished and he will never rise again, he will never finish.
Okay.
That's what the Quran meant.
So let me show you in the Gospels where it states clearly Christ was buried. Now remember what I just read from Josephus Flavius in his Jewish Wars, a historian of the 1st century, talking about normative behavior of Judaism. And now with those words ringing in your ears, listen to this. When it was evening, this is from Matthew 27, reading from verse 57. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who himself had also become a disciple of Jesus. This man went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate ordered it to be given to him, and Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn out in the rock, and he had rolled a large stone against the entrance of the tomb, and went away. And Mary Magdalene was there, and the other Mary sitting opposite the grave. So we've got clear 1st century witness that Christ was buried. We have clear 1st century witness that it was normal to bury even the crucified before the setting of the sun.
Which gospel is that?
I read from Matthew 27.
Matthew was a witness. Was it?
Yes, Matthew is a witness to the resurrection.
Alright. Not the resurrection. I'm talking about the.
And I'm talking about the burial, and you haven't addressed the burial.
Yeah, I don't need. Listen, bro.
Yes, you do need to address the burial, because if the Quran is true, then a body was buried, right?
Yeah.
Right. So what happened to the body?
It stayed in the ground.
So why did the first Christians come to believe that Christ had risen from the dead and that the tomb was empty?
Well, that's their problem.
No, it's your problem.
No, it's not my problem.
It is your problem, because
I don't believe they did.
Why do you think the Quran is wrong?
Because the Quran, if we take his argument, or even, I mean,
his argument is based not on the Quran.
Do you-
His argument based on some hadith.
let me ask you this question. Right, you believe that the Christ teaches Christ was crucified and he died on a cross.
I think it is still in line with the Quran.
Do you believe that Christ was risen from the dead?
Yes, I think, because as I said, there is few Muslim scholars they have admitted. Otherwise, I wouldn't. They have
Yeah.
explained
Official
exact-
notification
They have
for you.
explained it properly.
Official notification for you. Read it.
Word
That's
by
official. Read it. It's for you.
I'll pick
Read
it up later.
You will pick it up later.
Sorry, continue. You're just going to have to ignore him. He's not well. Please stop, please.
Yeah, take it.
No, I don't need to take it.
Take it.
Please continue.
Make sure nobody
The park
else
just
take it
attracts
apart
people
from you.
that are
That's
unwell.
for you.
Why-
You just
okay.
got to push through.
All right.
That's for you.
Why do you think that maybe someone else was on the cross? Do you believe that Jesus was not on the cross at all, or someone else was on the cross, or what the story?
Well, I don't believe any of the. There's like the three theories that everybody knows, but I don't endorse any of them. I just think maybe.
What do you
someone
think
else-
is it?
I don't have an opinion. I don't have to have an opinion about it. It's just it's theories that were put in
Yeah, but
place
the
to
Quran did say
justify.
that there is something happened about the cross. He said they did not succeed in killing, they did
Yeah.
not succeed in crucifying.
Fine,
It's
yeah.
only appeared to them.
Yes.
So here the Quran doesn't mention anyone else. He's talking
Listen.
about Jesus only. This is the first thing, yeah?
I don't think you have to endorse any theory as long as you just believe those two things. Those
Yeah, but we have a Quran at least. We can rely on.
Yes, but what I'm
Quran
saying
say
to you.
this, then, you know,
So let me reply
this is the
because
first thing to start with.
let me reply because what I notice is that the Quran accuses Christians of do not have any certainty about what happened, that they crucified the Messiah Jesus, but they only have their conjecture.
Yeah.
But yet every Christian agrees that Christ was crucified and he rose from the dead. And here I'm presented with two Muslims that can't agree with
but
what
they do,
happened
they don't.
and only have their conjecture.
Yeah, but the Jews, they don't agree that Jesus was on the cross.
There's a lot of Christian sects, groups that did not believe he was crucified.
So let me
If we're talking about that specific time, then yes, it was making a correct assertion.
So let me press on, because I think that you guys have basically, you're in trouble. The Quran is in trouble,
No.
right? You're just
I'm in
saying
trouble, maybe.
you're in trouble because you're just saying I don't have to deal with the facts,
No, I'm not saying I
These
don't
are
have to deal with
facts,
the
bro.
I'm not saying I don't
right?
think they are facts.
How
I'm
do you haven't even attempted to explain the empty tomb? Do you believe that there was an empty tomb?
In the Quran, God did not explain it, what's happening exactly in the empty tomb.
But there was
He
an empty
doesn't have
tomb.
to explain it because the Quran we believe, is a pure God word. Yeah. So I do believe also that in the Bible, pure God word in the Bible did not explain exactly what's happened with Jesus. All these things based on the history. The Quran is not based on the history.
Right, I agree.
Yeah,
The
that's the
Quran
first
is
thing.
not based on history.
Second thing.
Totally agree. Quran is not historical.
No, it is history.
it is.
There's a story. If he says it, of course there is lots of story. God
So let me ask you this question, both of you,
Yeah.
right? How do you explain that the very first Christians went on to believe that they had had literal physical experiences of Jesus Christ risen from the dead?
We don't have to have these things in the Quran. Shall I ask you a question? You
Well,
can answer
I'd
me?
like you to answer my question
No, I'm
first.
going to ask you a question now because you.
His answer is a question.
Let me ask you a question. In the Bible, from what I know, about Ishmael,
You're changing the topic. We're talking about the resurrection.
yeah, but in the Bible also, there is not too many information about Ishmael,
Yep.
which for us is very important. So that's why we don't have to go to the Bible, we go to the Quran, because we know about Ishmael more, about our Islamic history, than the Bible. So you're asking me a question about Jesus, which is, I'm sure you should have more knowledge in the Bible. No, Quran. No, Quran, they did mention a few things about it, yes. But about Ishmael, it is in our history.
Right. Let me reply because you're not.
Because Joseph, I remember.
No,
the last
you're
time I heard
just
about
getting
Ishmael.
just getting way off the pot. You're just getting way off the topic. The point is, there is a historical reality
Yeah.
that is not denied by any serious historian, that the first Christians came to believe that they had had experiences of the risen Jesus Christ. If the Quranic story is true, then those experiences could never have occurred.
Yeah.
So, on the one hand, we have the undisputable fact of the historical experiences of the first Christians claiming that they had experiences of the risen Jesus.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we have the Quran claiming that Christ wasn't crucified, he didn't die, he wasn't raised from the dead.
Yeah.
One of these things is false.
Which one?
If either the first apostles did not have experiences of the risen Jesus, in which case you have to explain to me how they came to think that they did, or the Quran is false and its statement that Christ was never crucified and someone else was crucified in his place is a lie, and the Quran is not from God.
Yeah,
So
but the Quran did not say that someone else was on the cross.
that's exactly what it says. He says it. Well, you two, who's right? I mean, I've got one Muslim saying one thing and another Muslim saying
this
another
one,
thing.
I'm sure even he knows. That was not mentioned in the Quran. There was something else. Someone else was on the cross.
He literally,
From
so
the Quran.
he literally said that you're wrong.
I don't say it's wrong.
So you believe it was Jesus Christ who was crucified. He believes Jesus Christ was crucified according to the Quran.
This is between us and you, not between me and him.
Do you believe that Jesus Christ was crucified?
No.
No. Do you believe
And then-
Jesus Christ was crucified?
Yes, he was. On
There you go. So who's right? Because you can't both be right.
Yeah, that's as I said.
That's
It is
another
in line
discussion.
with the Quran. That's what I believe.
Right.
It's not enough.
So
Show me.
my reality is no. Don't run away from our debate. If you want to debate this guy, feel free, but go somewhere else. So here's another thing. Explain to me why Jews would suddenly start honouring Sunday as a special day.
Because they led astray.
What?
They're led astray.
What led them astray?
What Jews are we talking about?
Talking about the first Christians,
Who are?
Jews,
They're not the disciples.
the apostles,
The apostles who? Like who?
Matthew, Mark, Peter, these people.
These are apostles.
Yes,
Luke.
I can give you the full list if you want.
Yeah.
Okay,
yes.
fine. I'll give you the full
It's
list.
not necessary, but
No, it seems that you want the full
But
list,
is-
so let me
is-
give you the
is
full
all
list.
The Quran, you know what the Quran meant. He said something very profound in the Quran.
yeah.
Is when the Jewish people they put Jesus on the cross, they wanted to make sure that he died and killed, so he's cursed.
Yeah.
Because at that time, if anyone put him on the cross, he's cursed. So
cursed.
what the Quran saying, defending Jesus and saying Jesus they did not succeed in crucifying him because Jesus is not cursed. That's what does it mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's only appeared to them that by putting Jesus on the cross that he is cursed, but he's not. Then God said, "I'm taking you to me." So now we believe that,
Okay.
that Jesus is with God.
You haven't answered my question.
For me, the question is because when we talk about these things, for me, it goes back to are the Gospels reliable? And
No, the proclamation of the resurrection is before the Gospels.
Yes, but the account is in the Gospels.
No, the proclamation, everyone agrees, everyone who's a scholar of this topic agrees that the resurrection was proclaimed before the Gospels were written. So your argument
Especially
about
in the Old Testament.
your argument that can we trust the Gospels is actually irrelevant. Because the resurrection was proclaimed before the Gospels. Paul wrote before the Gospels and he talks about the resurrection.
I saw you referring to Paul.
No, Paul wrote to churches that believed in the resurrection even before he wrote to them, like Romans. So the point is, all the historical evidence demonstrates that the resurrection occurred before anyone wrote about it. That the belief in the resurrection occurred before anyone wrote about it. So your argument, whilst it is an important question, is not actually relevant to this discussion.
Well, if we're gonna take the account from the New Testament in general, Paul and the Gospels as well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to ask the question: are they reliable? Because to me, if say there was a belief before the Gospels were written, but I cannot trust the Gospels, then I'm not gonna trust what the Gospels tell me. About
So I'm just going to say, until you actually address my question, I don't need to address your question.
What question?
So the question that I asked you, and I ask you again, what makes Jews in the first century suddenly start venerating Sunday as an important day? Like, let's test your knowledge of Judaism. What day is important in
I
Judaism?
don't have Judaism
Saturday.
knowledge.
Saturday,
Yeah, not Sunday.
not Sunday. What is Sunday to a Jew?
I'm not sure.
First day of the week. It's a working day.
Yeah.
It's not important. So why do we see evidence that Christians started treating Sunday as a special day? What could have happened to make them start treating Sunday like a special day?
Because of Jesus, you mean? Resurrection?
Exactly. Something happened that made them transform their thinking and go, great, we've got the Sabbath, but we also have the Lord's Day, and the Lord's Day is the day that Christ rose from the dead.
So why they take a day off on Saturday? Is it because God in the Old Testament told them to take the day
Yes,
off
Jews,
on Saturday? not
the first Jewish Christians were Jews, and so they honored the Saturday as a Sabbath.
I see.
But-
And the day rest for you on Sunday, and the day rest for us is on Friday.
But
It's a separate day.
that's irrelevant to the point I've just made. All you've done is throw out some facts. the point that I've just made is that Jews in the first century inexplicably start revering Sunday as a special day. Why? Well, the Gospels give an answer. Christ rose on the first day of the week. That's the Lord's Day. Now, I want you to explain to me if the Quran is right, that Jesus wasn't crucified and someone else was crucified in his place, which means there was no resurrection. Why did Jews in the first century start honoring Sunday as a special day?
Because they believed maybe that.
Believe what?
Believe that what someone else said that they saw Jesus.
No, the first Christians believed that they saw Jesus, not that someone else told them that they saw Jesus.
Were they Jews?
Yes.
Well, I don't know. I cannot answer that question. You're asking me something that I don't have an answer for.
I think the Jews, they should believe now that Jesus was on the cross.
Yeah.
There is 2,400,000,000 Christians believe in Jesus.
Yeah.
So why don't they believe?
So let me present this counterfactual to you.
Yep.
There's a number of historical events that are not disputed by historians. If the Quranic claim is true, Muslims, as you have demonstrated, have no explanation for these historical facts. Ergo,
But what he said is not from the
ergo, the Quran is false, and it is a lie, it is not true. Now we've destroyed your position, let's talk about yours.
point of view. Yeah.
Right, so you explain to me the point he could not explain. Why did Christians start venerating the Sunday as a special day?
Why did the Christians start venerating?
The Sunday as a special day?
I think it's because of Jesus was on the cross, yes.
No.
Because of the crucifixion.
But, well, they venerated Friday as a special day.
Ah, you mean day
Yes,
Sunday?
Sunday. Why did first century Jews proclaim Sunday as a special day? What Jewish reason is there?
I told you what I think, but I'm not sure. I haven't read.
Sorry, I missed your answer. What's your answer again?
The answer was, I said, is because of Jesus was on the cross.
Jesus, but he
On Friday.
right on the Friday. So that means if they were doing it because Jesus hung on a cross on a Friday, they'd venerate the Friday. But they didn't. They venerated the Sunday. If they're venerating the Sunday, they're doing that for a reason, and there's no Jewish reason to venerate a Sunday. That's the first day of the week. It's a working day of the week. That means that something happened that made them think Sunday was important. I have an answer to that question. It's called the resurrection. What Quranic answer do you have?
But the resurrection.
What Quranic answer do you have?
I have told you already what God said.
Go on, show me in the Quran where it says Jesus rose from the dead.
All I know that God in the Quran said that well, let me just check it quickly so I can see.
Yeah.
تعرف الآية طبعا إني
So while these guys find their passage, I'm just going to go over.
I'm purifying you now.
You show me the passage. I'm just going to read the 12 facts that the Quranic story can't account for. Fact 1, Jesus died by crucifixion. Fact 2, Jesus was buried in a tomb. Fact 3, disciples despaired and felt hopeless. Fact 4, the tomb was empty a few days later. Fact 5, disciples believe they experienced the literal appearance of a risen Jesus Christ. Fact 6, the disciples were transformed by that experience. Fact 7, that Jesus' resurrection was the central message of the early church. Fact 8, Jesus was proclaimed as resurrected in the city in which Jesus was killed, Jerusalem. Fact 9, as a result of their preaching, the church was born and it grew. Fact 10, this is the one that they can't answer. Amongst the others they can't answer. Sunday became the primary day of Christian worship. Fact 11, James, who was skeptical of Jesus Christ, became a follower of Jesus Christ. Fact 12, Paul, who was a persecutor of the church, became a follower of Jesus Christ. If Jesus Christ was not crucified and did not rise from the dead, as Muslims claim, then these facts of history should never have happened. But the fact is, every historian worth his salt agrees that these facts did happen. And if they did happen, then Muslims, according to their Quran, have no answer as to why. Go on.
God, after the crucifixion, God said, "Oh Isa, I'm putting you now like to sleep, or I'm taking you to me, and I'm purifying you for what they have done to you, because they put him on the cross.
Yeah.
They wanted to make sure, they wanted him to be cursed.
Yeah.
So I'm purifying you from that, and then I'm making those people who follow you superior on other until the day of judgment."
Right.
That's what God said.
Okay. So his quote. Can I just get the passage so I can go to it as well?
That's 355.
355. Because
54. Yeah.
354. Because the thing is, the problems have just got worse for my Muslim interlocutors.
Worse.
Worse.
Okay, why?
Not better.
Why? But sila.
Right. 354.
Can you check it in English? Because I
Wait.
have in Arabic, so
Surah 354.
Yeah.
That's not what you've just said. I've got it here. It doesn't say that.
55. 55.
55. Okay, here we go. 55. Sorry, yes, you're quite right. So let's just go through
Okay.
what the Quranic story is about what happened 2,000 years ago.
Alright.
But now we're going to assume he's right about what the Quran says and not him. Because these Muslims don't agree with themselves about what their own Quran teaches, and they only have conjecture between them. Right?
Yes, but also
So wait.
Christianity,
Listen,
there is lots of
bro,
parties
bro.
and they don't
Listen,
believe.
and they all
Jehovah's
agree.
Witnesses, they don't believe.
They all
Christ
agree
is what
with
you
Christ was
believe.
crucified and they
After
rose from the dead.
Yeah.
All of them agree.
All
All of them. All of them agree. All of them agree. So, because he's just made his problems worse, let's listen to what the Quran says.
Ikra.
Behold, Allah said, O Jesus, I will take thee to myself and raise thee to myself and clear thee of the falsehoods of those who blaspheme. Now notice, they've just associated blasphemy with speaking about Jesus. That's a subtle example of where the Quran borrowed from stories it didn't understand, because you can't blaspheme against someone who's a man. But they're saying they blasphemed against Jesus, showing that the Muslim authors of the Quran were borrowing stories they didn't understand.
No,
It goes
can I
on.
correct that point?
I will make those who follow thee, Christos Anesti. I will make those who follow thee to those who I will make those who follow thee superior to those who reject faith.
From now
Now,
on.
just
from now
think, ladies and gentlemen, 2,000 years ago, if this work of fiction is true, then that means the Almighty God Allah promised to the Muslim followers of Jesus that they would be superior over all of their opponents. But what do we see in history? We see that the Christianity that I believe in, that every Muslim in this park rejects, was the victorious Christianity, was the superior Christianity, which means that my Christianity, not their Quranic fiction, was the one that won the battle of history, which means that Allah failed in his promises, because Allah says he's going to make them superior to their enemies, and he failed to do so. Furthermore, I'm responding to him.
Sir, I don't understand what you're trying to say.
Where is this? Where in this passage? Where in this passage does it say that Allah raised him from the dead? I didn't see it.
It's not in this passage.
So that's what I asked you. I asked you to show me in the Quran where it says Allah was raised from the dead.
It doesn't show in the Quran.
It does not show in the
That's all we
Quran.
can see here, that he's after the crucifixion, he took him.
Speak more loudly, sorry. Yeah.
Well, you made 2 points that I need to come back to, which are the first one, that the promise that Allah made to the followers, to Jesus, about his followers, that he's gonna
Making those people who follow you now,
Above.
from now on, superior another, because
Above,
of the miracle of the.
Yeah, but
of
basically,
Jesus.
yeah.
Because this is a big miracle.
Above is understood in two ways. The first one is in the hereafter, and the other one is
In this
the
world.
one, yeah. And basically, in the group of Christians in the time of the Prophet Muhammad, the prevalent ones were your kind of Christianity, which means he understood that the followers of Jesus were not above in that sense. So that means that the intended meaning is the one which is the other one, which which is above in rank in,
Okay.
in the hereafter.
So my point is, and I'm not getting, sorry, you want to do batteries? For the sake of the argument, I'm not even going to dispute what he said.
Okay.
Because it does not address the problem that I am presenting.
What?
The problem that I am presenting, that these two have completely been confounded by and have zero response to, is that there are 12 indisputable facts of history that if the Quran was true, the Quran doesn't give any answer for. 12 facts of history that the answer that Christians give does account for, that Christ had risen from the dead. What are these facts? That Christ was crucified, he was buried, the tomb was found empty, the apostles despaired at his death, they were transformed by his resurrectional experiences, they believed that these resurrectional experiences were true, they moved the day of important ceremony to a Sunday, that the central message of their proclamation was that Christ had risen from the dead, that opponents to the Christian faith who had persecuted the church had become Christians, that skeptics of Jesus had become Christians, and that the church grew because of the proclamation that Jesus had risen from the dead and was born because of that proclamation.
Yeah, but all this based on the history.
Yes,
written
correct.
In the Bible,
It's
yeah?
based on history.
Written in the Bible.
Yes, and
but this is
so
not
the
God's
Quran
word.
is fiction.
No, my friend. This is not God words in the Bible. Is this the God words? in
Yes,
the
it's
Bible?
God's words in the Bible.
No, this is John.
Yes, everything
Luke.
that I have just said is God's word in the Bible.
Show it to me again.
Right.
Give me this one. That's God himself, the one talking in the Bible.
So which one do you
because
want me
God
to...
doesn't have to explain in such a way everything
Yes.
in the Quran. He pointed out a few things and then that's it.
All
and
of-
the same in the Bible.
all of the
God doesn't have
points.
to explain everything.
All of the points.
Wait a minute. Different between the Bible and the Quran. The Quran is only God word. That's what we believe, preserved. Yeah. Now, if you want to look at the history and more details and explanation, then we go through history. So the Bible is mixed between God word and John, Luke, and other people.
No,
So that's what we believe.
no. That's
How-
what you
how many
believe.
percentage-
But we don't believe
All
that.
right, how many percentage of God words in the Bible? Can you tell
100%.
me? Yeah, but this is not God word himself talking.
Yeah, we
I
have
can
a
see
different-
There is highlighted already.
So-
lots of sentences highlighted in the Bible, which means there
One-
is
one
God
second.
word highlighted in red, and Jesus word highlighted. in red.
Let's be clear.
The rest of them are not.
Let's be clear.
God words.
You've heard,
That's the difference.
you've heard my argument. There are historical facts that the Quran has no explanation for.
doesn't have to explain
And if the
everything.
Quran was true, those historical facts would not have happened. If the resurrection did not happen, the central message of the church would not be that the resurrection happened. If the resurrection did not happen, then Sunday would not have been honored as a holy day. If the resurrection did not happen, then Christians would not have, the first Christians would not have had an experience of a literal risen Jesus. The Quran states that the crucifixion and resurrection did not happen.
No, he didn't.
And
The
therefore,
Quran did not say it.
Muslims have no answer as to these historical facts, but we Christians do, and better, we Christians do because of first century evidence. Muslims have a 7th century fiction, and as you have just seen,
The Quran is for
Muslims
He doesn't have to
are,
explain
they have no answers at all.
everything about Jesus. Yeah.
I don't
Doesn't
think
have
these
to
are
explain
facts,
everything
bro.
about Jesus.
So dispute them historically.
No,
It's like you asking me.
I'm not gonna because I'm not an expert. You picked the topic, but I told you since the beginning. If I don't have an answer for these things.
You don't have an answer, and he doesn't have an answer.
Yeah, but I'm no expert. This is not.
Are you even paying attention?
This is.
You're like, I mean, you've been stood here for like 20 minutes and you are still clueless about what we're talking about.
This is
You've
it.
got to listen, bro.
I really, because this is not an area where I'm really educated. So I told you at the beginning, I don't have an answer for these questions. But we kept going on and on. But I don't have answers for these questions. So you don't have
Yeah.
to keep saying I don't have an answer for these
So
questions.
which
because-
Muslim do you think has an answer to these questions? I'll go talk to him.
I don't know. I haven't seen who's here today.
Because I guarantee that no Muslim has a Quranic answer to this problem.
They don't have to.
They don't have one. and they don't have one, but it is a problem, ladies and gentlemen. And the reason why it is a problem is because these are historical realities. And they're historical realities that if the Quran were true, these historical realities would never have happened. But they did happen. And because they did happen, that means the Quran has a historical problem that disproves the Quran. And it is evidence to the truth of the Christian faith.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So I'll ask you again, can you show me in the Quran where it says Jesus was resurrected? It's not there.
As I said, the Quran doesn't have to explain every single thing in the Quran, yeah?
Yeah.
These things, we should go to the history. We should go back to the history.
Yes.
For example,
So let's do that.
Jesus descended. Did God say it clearly in his by himself where Jesus coming from originally? Descend of
Yes,
Jesus?
yes, Jesus said
Was
that.
it him?
Yes, Jesus said, I have come from my Father. It's in the Gospel of John.
No. I mean, originally he come from Isa. Yeah?
Yes, Jesus said, I have come from heaven. I have come from my Father.
I'm talking
He
about
literally
the authenticity
says
of
that in the
Jesus.
Gospels.
Talking about originally where he come from, Isaac.
I've
or his
literally just
from.
told you, Jesus says literally, I have come from my Father. That's literally what Jesus says. Jesus literally says, I have come from heaven.
We're not denying that. I'm just telling
Muslims
you. God,
do deny it.
No.
If Jesus comes from his Father, then as his Father is eternal, so he is eternal as well.
In the Quran, Jesus is the word
The
of God.
Quran is not
that's a
the
different
Quran is not the word of Allah. The Quran is a false book, and I've given you evidence why it is a
what you
lie. It's a lie. And you're clueless to deal with my argument.
You argue, you already prepared the 12 question you have. We did not, so I don't have to explain.
So you don't have to explain.
Second
Okay.
thing, I'm not a scholar here.
Look.
To answer you all this.
You guys are really decent people. You guys are really decent
Yeah.
people. I love hanging out with you. I love talking to you. However,
Next time,
however, on this topic, Christians have just won this argument flat out. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can find a Muslim that can give me a better answer than I don't have to answer the problem, which is the answer that these two gave. It's lovely talking to you. It's lovely talking to you. You know I always give a gift.
Next time, pick something I can talk about.
Yeah. Let me give you a gift. You know I always give you a gift.
You're not gonna give me another Bible, are you?
No, why would I give you another Bible? I know you've got one.
Yeah, I gave you one before.
I'm giving you something else.
Two Bibles.
No, it's not a Bible. Okay, here's a book for you.
Oh, come on.
What book is it?
The cross and the Torah.
Yep, it's showing you all the Old Testament references that show that the expectation of a crucified Messiah. The fact of the matter is, if Christ was crucified, Islam is false.
No,
Fact. If Christ rose from the dead, every other religion is false. Fact. It's that simple. If Christ rose from the dead, it's game over for every other ideology, every other worldview, every other religion, and every other belief system. If Christ rose from the dead, Christianity is true. End of story.
We never said the Christianity religion is not true.
You did.
And we do believe that Jesus is
Did
the
Christ
one-
rise from the dead?
Is the one who's coming back.
Did Christ rise from the dead?
And every Muslim believe that.
No, he doesn't believe. He's a Muslim.
Let's end it.
It's mentioned in the Quran that Jesus is
See,
coming.
Muslims don't agree. He doesn't believe that Christ rose from the dead, do you? Do you believe? He's a Muslim. He claims that Christ rose from the dead. Do you believe that? Never. So there you go. Two Muslims think you're wrong. You're more Christian than you are Muslim, my friend. And it's time you become a Christian. It's time that you become a Christian. It really is. Okay.
The last thing I want to point out, you asking me questions.
No, I'm done now. Right, God bless you. God bless you. We'll have a cup of coffee. We'll have a cup of coffee later.